Alrighty guys, welcome back indeed for some more Path of Exile content. So in part 13 of our play session here, we are going to be doing the final lap. Keep in mind right now, at the moment, my character is a lot further than what you're about to see, but I'm always trying to show you guys things so you guys can kind of plan ahead. We've actually changed up the build a little bit here. We're still doing the same skills and stuff, it's just we're going to be maybe changing up a few skills if you want to. Keep in mind, Path of Exile, depending on what like gear that you have, there's so many things to factor in, and I don't know like how much currency that you guys have gotten. So if you don't actually have the currency to buy some of these items, don't feel bad at all, as these are just my suggestions for you guys. But one particular thing that I would recommend almost every single one of you guys to get, because it's relatively cheap, is to get a snake pit ring. What this does is it allows us to do what I was trying to do before. If you guys remember in our playthrough, I was mentioning there's amulets going to make our like DPS go up like crazy. It's going to help out with the projectiles. It doesn't actually work with spells. So what it does work with though is the snake pit ring, because this works off of projectiles from spells, not attacks. Keywords are very important. Obviously it is a spell, but there are certain interactions with Path of Exile that can work around certain like text where it might not match it perfectly, but because of an interaction it just happens to work. So in order to get massive DPS, we're going to be actually using Snake Pit. So what you're going to do is acquire this ring. It can range obviously from the price, but at the time of me making this video, it's anywhere from like 2 to 3 chaos. It's pretty cheap. I do have a corruption on mine, I just got really lucky, but it normally will have additional cold resistance. Don't worry about trying to get the cannot be ignited. It's just a luck thing. I got lucky. It doesn't really help out with DPS. It's just more for survivability. But what's important is you want to equip it in the right ring socket. So what it does on the right ring, projectiles from spells can chain 1+ times. They cannot fork or pierce. So basically it gives us +1 time of chaining. What this means is if I throw down, or if it hits an enemy, but more so it's when I throw down my Hydrosphere, if there's an enemy that is going to be next, kind of close to it, because it can't like chain like super far off the screen, unless you happen to have certain conditions met. If something gets hit by this, it will then bounce it back onto the target. What this allows us to do for bosses is basically hit it multiple times. I've actually increased this even further by adding in another curse called Sniper's Mark. So what Sniper Mark does is it curses an enemy. Now we already have 2 curses. If you guys have followed exactly what I'm getting, this item's super cheap anyways, but it was the Wind Scream, where it has that ability where we can apply additional curse. Now I've gotten a new amulet since then that lets us apply another additional curse, so that's 3 total. So right now I also got a new staff, and I'll explain all the stuff here because it's kind of important. So the important thing with this staff, I did get lucky and I got this for pretty cheap. It was actually 45 chaos orbs. What I looked for was a staff that specifically had +3 to all level of the cold spell skill gems. So that's going to increase our DPS regardless of if it's socketed within this or not. So my Eye of Winter is still on my Shadow Stitch, which I have, if you mouse over it, it says +3 levels, so it's still going to level up one more time over here, and you can even get a Corrupted Gem to go even further, but specifically that's what I looked for. In addition, I looked for something that would also increase our damage, so in our case, it's going to be increased spell damage, cold damage, and increase like X amount of like some type of number, cold damage to spells. Extra cast speed is great, and additional increased critical strike chance. I did mention before we were going to eventually go into crit, as in Path of Exile, it's usually not the best to start off trying to make a crit build because the numbers, and you won't just get the amount of crit chance and crit, not only crit chance, but crit damage that you'll need, and crit damage in this game is called Critical Strike Multiplier. So let me go and show you guys the tree, and if you feel overwhelmed, keep in mind, you can totally play it the way that you want to. If you're like, you know what, I want to not go crit, hey, that's fine, but keep in mind, I'm just giving you guys this as a suggestion, as it's going to further increase your DPS. Another thing I want to mention, don't always believe what this says over here. There are certain gems that will, let's say, for example, right now I'm currently going to get more of a benefit off of cold penetration. If you see my damage right here, this first number, it says 22,000. Now if I take this out and I put it in, it doesn't even change the damage. What the heck's going on? Again, you can't always believe this, even though it's still accurate. We're still doing the same amount of damage in theory on the character's like damage sheet, but because, for example, this penetrates their cold resistance, which is already going to be negative because of our 2 curses that we put on our enemy, this is going to make it even further into the negatives because it's penetrating that cold resistance. All these numbers can be calculated in an application called Path of Building, and if you guys want to, you guys can go into it, but this is what I'm running for my gem setup now as things have changed. So I'm still using Eye of Winter. I'm running Inspiration, so that gives us extra elemental damage, which is more damage, and then also increased critical strike chance per inspiration charge, also giving us an additional mana cost reduction. I am running Hypothermia support and cold penetration. Previously I was running Ice Bite and added cold damage. Again, don't feel like you have to change the build just because I'm just giving you guys extra ideas for suggestions, as eventually we'll start to min-max. Now you can also think about getting these qualities up, like for example this has 23 quality, I bought it like that, but you can use your Gem Cutter's Prisms, or you can buy them at a very high quality. Also you can buy them at a max level, so keep in mind, if you've got the money to do that, you can do that as well. And then we're running increased critical strike support as well as increased critical strikes damage. That's our setup, and I'll show you guys some gameplay in a moment here, and then we'll do the final lab. So this is what I'm running for my setup. I'm also over some of the items. I don't have anything special. We've been running, I think, Crown of the Inward Eye for a while. The important thing with the amulet, though, if you want to add another curse, in our case, it's going to be Sniper's Mark, which curses the enemy, and what it does is it makes it so the projectiles will hit them again. So the projectiles which hit cursed enemies split towards 3 additional targets. So you'll see the gameplay in a second, but when I throw down my Hydrosphere over here, it's going to bounce off of the Hydrosphere, hit them, bounce back. It's just going to be just doing lots of bounce backs, and it's just a way to increase our DPS really, really, really easily by just making the hit amount just astronomically high. I don't know if we've increased the gloves. I think we did since the last time we played through. All I did was look for extra chaos resistance and gloves, crit strike chance. Okay, that's okay for us. Again, you don't have to get this. This is something, again, everything I'm mentioning is optional. I got a ring that just happened to have good stats. I don't remember what I paid for this, probably like 5, maybe 10 chaos. There's a lot of currencies that you guys might have acquired through just playing the game. Like you might have a ton of these or a ton of these. You can start selling all of these. Start selling all the things that you feel like you might not need. As I will kind of show you guys some crafting, but I feel like most of you guys will benefit way more off of just selling your stuff versus trying to randomize and getting something really good. Honestly, crafting is like several hours of like just explaining this item can roll this item that has this influence rolls this. This is a nightmare. I'm just going to recommend you guys mostly to sell your currency because you'll get more value because your knowledge simply isn't there yet. Also, there is a huge gamble with a lot of like the randomization. You can spend hours, weeks to grind one item to get it like really, really good, and then when you go to modify it one more time, it makes it worth nothing. That's how Path of Exile is. If you want to craft, just gonna warn you guys as a heads up. That's the way it goes. I've also got this belt here. Now this belt is a little bit different. It has a sock in it. They're called Stygian Visors. These can be a little bit pricey, but if you have the currency, look for specifically life, some resistances, and you want it to have a socket so you can put in a, this is called a hypnotic eye jewel. Eye jewels are different than regular jewels as you can socket them inside of gear that lets you do it. It's not something that's required. I mean, the stats on this isn't really that big of a deal. It just gives us extra resistance. I needed the strength and dex too, so it was just something I had. It's really not that big of a deal. In fact, you can run a leather belt and you'll get pretty much the same stats. It's just that I wanted it because of the extra 15 chaos res, and at the right price, it was worth it. Another thing that I've actually purchased are these auto flasks. So I just purchased these. These are about like 10 to 20 chaos a piece. But these automatically activate. They are used when charges reach full. Now, a diamond flask will increase your crit chance. I talked about that previously, but these are all on auto cast. One thing that's really good also is this flask called Forbidden Taste. You have to have a lot of chaos resistance, otherwise you will damage yourself. I'm going to activate it manually, and normally how it works is when I take a savage hit, which means a hit that removes 15% of my maximum life, it's going to just automatically activate and it'll heal 81% of our life. But we also take 25% of our maximum life taken as chaos damage per second. So what this means is if I activate this, our life will start to drain until it runs out. This is the one flask where you don't want to get quality on it. It actually makes it worse technically. But it also gives you extra dodge, but we're not scaling dodge, so it doesn't really matter too much. But yeah, that is something I do need to mention. I would recommend getting this if you have the currency. And these are all used when charges reach full. To explain this, actually, I should actually show off, let me go to both websites over here, because Path of Exile is pretty complex, and I don't want to leave you guys out of the loop here. So I'm going to share this screen over here, and now you guys can see the trade. So like I said before, you want the staff if you want to. You're still going to get a lot of damage with the fire damage, and if you are happy with it, by all means, whatever. But these are very cheap. You don't have to get it 6-socketed. I just got lucky with mine. There was one at the right price. Ideally, you would want it 6-linked, right? Let's just keep this. It's just the text plus number to a level, and you want 3. Like, I mean, you could get 2 for a lot cheaper, but you want 3. Okay, they're kind of pricey right now, depending on what you want to go for. You could get away with a 5-link perfectly fine because it's just linked to our Hydrosphere, but you can see, there we go. Although this is a good text, just start scrolling through. Look, okay, there's 8% spell damage, 100% crit strike chance. That's good. Lightning damage, you want cold damage. So, like, look around. You know, it's just going to take time. A lot of times when I buy something, I don't always just... Sometimes you get lucky, you see it, you're like, I'm going to buy it right now. I usually have this up on another monitor, and I'm just playing every 5-10 minutes, refresh. Every 5-10 minutes, refresh. You can also technically add in things that would make sounds for it, but let's not get into, like, third-party apps, or... I mean, you can do it with this, actually, too. But pretty much, for the most important thing is specifically the flasks, because these are important. So we're going to also add another stat filter. Use when, it's, what's the exact, you have to copy the text exactly. It's used when, let's see, it's enchant used when, wait, where is it? Actually, we'll type in charges reach. Used when charges reach full, and then you can hit search, and you kind of just want to go for whatever that you need. Start scrolling down because it's going to sort them by price. Overflowing chalice is pretty good. There's the one I have, 7 chaos. That is a that's a 95%. That's a good one. But for 7 chaos, these are getting cheaper as prices are, you know, starting to like kind of mellow out. These were really expensive at the start because people were like, wow, this is so good. But yeah, lots and lots of other things to go ahead and purchase if you want to purchase those. But as far as the skill tree goes, we have actually modified it a little bit. I've actually dropped some of the elemental and some of these ones over here. Again, don't feel like you have to copy mine exactly, but I'm just going to tell you what I've done. So we unspec'd out of the Breath of Rhyme, so we took out these points. We are going to start getting some of the crit nodes. So a lot of the stuff that is reliant on crit. There's a node right here, counterweight's giving us crit. This is also giving us crit. I'm just going to zoom out and give you guys a second to kind of look at the skill tree and copy it if you want. I know it's like kind of sucks. It feels awkward to like, oh man, I got all these things. I got to use my Orb of Regrets. It's part of the game. I don't think that there's really any one player that goes for a permanent build the whole way. A lot of times you spec into things to spec in and out later, like the Elemental Overload. You want to drop this if you're going for crit, because you're never going to get any of your crit for damage if you have this. But this is something that a lot of builds will get in the very beginning, and then they drop it. Why do they drop it? It's because you can get way more crit damage later in the game than you can earlier. And that's just kind of how things work. So I grabbed some of these nodes over here, and I dropped out. I think I mentioned this before, but originally I was getting some more like mana stuff, but they had updated the game because they decided, okay, people are complaining about the mana too much. This is part of Path of Exile. Part of any, you know, game, there are updates, and I got to give you guys the info. And sometimes when there's an update that goes in a different direction, you're going to have to spec out in or out for it. That's just part of it. I've also added a jewel. If you happen to have the currency for it, it's called the Nema Stone. It gives you another golem, which is really good. This is not super cheap, though. It'll run you about 40 to 50-ish chaos. Again, at the time of me making this video, prices can fluctuate. Keep that in mind. I'll talk more about this later, but this is what's called a Glorious Vanity Jewel, and it's really weird because it completely changes up your tree. I'll give you a brief little like rundown though. So this gives us Pain Attunement, right, which is 30% more spell damage, but if I put this in, everything in this circle completely changes. Like now this gives us increased cold damage, increased cast speed. Depending on where I put this, it's going to change. Now these are expensive. They're about roughly about 100 Chaos Orbs is the translation right now, but it has a number tied to it, and that number, as well as it says passes radius are conquered by the Vol, and the first text is bathed in the blood of 335. That number matters, but I cannot tell you, depending on the number, what it will give you. And I know that sounds crazy, but no one can really figure this thing out. These numbers, unless you have the exact number, it's so weird, and this is a thing that can get really complex. But the important part is you're getting something that says bathed in the blood of Doriani. That's the only important thing. It's going to change one of these to corrupted solely. It doesn't matter if you put multiple points, because one only is the one that matters. You can only have one of these, but it's going to modify everything in its ring. Completely changes. Like normally this gives us avoid stun while channeling. Now it's going to give us something different. It's random on what's going to give you, but it will always give you this, and that's the only thing I want, so that's the only important thing that matters. Everything in this radius will be changed, though. If I put it over here, it kind of messes up my build, so that's why I like spec'd out to the side so it doesn't touch anything. I don't want it to touch any of my skills for the most part. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you get a benefit, and a lot of times it's going to be messing your stuff up, and if I was to swap this over here, all my stuff will get messed up because I don't have like the strength and requirements for it. But that's what a Glorious Vanity Jewel does. There's also other ones, but that's the one that I kind of want because it can scale and give us basically, I mean, if you see how much extra shield that gives us, almost 1,000. It's insane. Look how much we're getting, basically 1,000 from just this jewel alone. But yeah, that's kind of what we've done for the build as far as it goes right now. These are the flasks I'm using. I'm just going to mouse over them. I still should have something that makes us immune to freeze, but I'll be getting that on our boots later. Also, if you're looking at this talisman, we want allocates Whispers of Doom. The rest of the stats, whatever on it, as long as you have, well, I needed dexterity on mine, but you're looking for just some amount of life, at least like 50 life, and then you want that crit trick multiplier is good for me because I'm scaling it. But if you're not scaling it, cold damage, spell damage, can all be cold damage, spell damage, LE damage. Not elemental attacks. Keep in mind, elemental attacks and regular are different because like spells is like any spell, projectiles is all the projectiles, which, you know, this technically has the tag in your skill. Because I already mentioned to you guys a long time ago, feel free to do what you want. You don't always have to play Eye of Winter, but if you do want to swap it up, run something that's slightly similar. Otherwise you might get kind of lost and your build just might not be up to par. And you could feel like, I messed up my build, what do I do? I know it happens, like, you know, to people. So maybe Freezing Pulse would be a good one, but do what you want to do. Like I said, I don't try to lock people into just playing things one way when I show off a build. But this is what I have currently on my Hydrosphere, because this is another important thing. I have Elemental Weakness, and I have our Hydrosphere as well as Frostbite. This is something we already had. We had it in a 4-link, it was in our gloves before. And then I'm also, well, this is what we had originally, these 4. Now I've added Power Charge on crits so we can get Power Charges, which makes us have more crit chance. And then I also ran Increased Critical Strike support. Ideally, I would run Onslaught support or Blind support or something else. I want this last one to be green, but you know, it's Path of Exile. It's part of the process. Sometimes you run something temporarily, and you'll boost it up later. Hydrosphere actually does a pretty good amount of damage, even in my red maps, which is kind of what we're at right now, which is like the tier 16s. I'm still melting all the content with the exception of the bosses pretty much in just like one go. It's really fast. You guys will see in a moment first like a boss. It takes a little bit of time, but we're still going to be scaling our damage way higher. We're going to eventually think about doing double void battery, even speccing out to be an occultist to even get more damage, although we lose some survivability. Sometimes with Path of Exile, honestly, one of the strategies is to kill the boss before something even happens, so you go, and you're almost a glass cannon for the sake of being actually stronger in a sense because you kill the boss before it gets to actually attack you. It's a valid strategy, which is weird, but that's how the game works. But yeah, this is my current tree. We are going to be speccing out. I think we specced into Divine Judgment at one point. I dipped out of it just so I can get the crits right now. Later down the line when I hit like even higher level, I can spec back into it. It's no big deal, but sometimes you spec in and out of things. It might not be the most efficient with your skill points, but it might help you out in the earlier stages because you're able to clear out content or do something a little bit earlier. Make sure you guys keep up your resistances and your chaos resistance, at least in the positive, as one of the bosses will be kind of hard. But let's go ahead and do the lab. I already mentioned to you guys that the last set of labs will be on the map, so you'll have to just randomly get them on the map, or you can join channel 820, which I'll show you. But let me show you guys gameplay, because this is important of how to use like the sniper's mark with the Hydrosphere. There's a positioning thing that I do want to kind of go over, and I'll show you guys gameplay in a second. But like, let's say June is the boss right here. I want to throw my Hydrosphere so it's still ticking next to them, but I don't want to actually shoot the Hydrosphere into them. This positioning matters a lot. I'm trying to move it just a little bit here, because it won't let you move it like just a few pixels. Sometimes you have to be like a decent amount. So this is where I would consider it to be pretty good. See how it's kind of hitting them? I want to try to have the eye pop on them, but in addition to that, I need this eye when it pops to hit this, but not have this block, if this makes sense. You can throw it behind him if you want. That also can work, but I like it to the side of them. I feel like that's more efficient, but if you throw it behind him, it's probably the easiest. And it's just, I like it to the side of them because you still get the proc chance. I mean, you could throw it like this far away, you'll still get the bounce, but then you lose the Hydrosphere's ticks on the boss. So keep that in mind as well. This is where positioning kind of matters. But keep in mind, you don't have to run Sniper's Mark if you don't want to. It's just gonna make your bossing experience a lot easier. But anyways, let's go show off some gameplay of like kind of like, you know, what I've done. Keep in mind, I'm showing you guys gameplay of me super far ahead, like which is like right now, which I'm like 90. Previously we were like 80 something, I want to say 80-ish, when we're doing the final lab, but that's important. I want to show you guys lab and like all the other stuff for this part of the video, but let's go ahead and roll the gameplay. Okay, I'm just going to voice over this part really quick. So, also with the Anima Stone, you can actually get your Flame Golem up. I was also using Dash for a little bit as well. So if you want to run Dash or Flame Dash, whatever your sockets are in your gym, I'd kind of swap that up. But it's really not that big of a deal, so I didn't really mention it in the build. But over here, we're fighting a boss. And this is over on, I believe, red maps at this point of the video. But pretty much just, again, that positioning matters. So look exactly where I'm positioning it. And you can see the shards bouncing off of the enemy. So that's how you do it. Alright, so we're going to do the final lab. So what you want to do is you can complete them on maps randomly, but it's going to take a long time. Go to channel 820 in the text chat, and you'll see people spamming like, I got this trial over here. All you do is right click and say, hey, invite me, and they will invite you, and you'll just go ahead and complete it. But you might not get an offering of the goddess at the very end. That's obtained by actually the person that clicks on it. So you're going to have to do all of these, and that is how you'll be set up to get the currency to enter the final trial, also completing all 6 of them. Alright, so we did the strategy where we went to the channel 820, and what's this guy's name? Low. Okay, we're going to teleport towards him, and we just zoned in. He just had the map ready to go, and it's just like people are spamming. You right click and you just say invite, and now we're going to be able to do Lingering Pain, which is like the last one that we actually need here. But you usually see a lot of people going in all together. Feel free to take it slow if you want. Like I mentioned before, it can be very dangerous. But with the Stone Golem alive, most of these are pretty much a cakewalk. And since you will be with other people, you can kind of follow them. And make sure that if you're not super confident, just that you're behind. Now, I'll solve this whole one. These are usually quite long, and sometimes you have to hit switches. If you don't know how the switches work, generally just hit all of them. And you can see like this guy's being lazy, he doesn't want to hit the switch. And like, you know, we could be lazy too. I'm trying to teach you guys the tactics. Yeah, it would make sense to, well, this guy's going over there too. But sometimes like, you know, one person will take the left side, one person will take the right side. I'll clear up the monsters, you know. I'm at least contributing in some way. But this is the last one that we got to solve. Woo! And then now I've completed all of those. One map drop. And yeah, that's all I had to do. And sometimes people will ask for, this guy didn't, I don't think he asked for it, but I'm just going to go ahead and trade. I'm just going to give him 2 alks. It's just something I had. Just as a nice little quick thank you. 2 alks isn't like much, but like I don't really have that much currency right now. And people appreciate any tips, unless you're giving them like talismans or something that's really bad. But you can surprise them with an item on the map too. You do whatever you want. But I've solved all of the things, so now I'm going to do my final ascendancy, and it will kind of give you a recommendation. And this one's actually going to be, what's this one? So it's 75, but it also costs something. Well, let me actually leave this party. We're going to have to go back, and I'm going to grab the offering to the goddess. Okay, so let me go and show you guys how to join the channel one more time, as some people want to do this. Some people, you know, you can just complete maps and you'll do it on your own. But remember, you got to have one of those offerings to the goddess, and what you're going to do is right click on where it says the global, and make sure you type in 820, and again, you'll see all of those things pop up. That's very important to go ahead and do. And you'll see a lot of other people offering like other services in this channel, and you can have someone run the lab for you. What you can do is you can just go back to this act, and if you just go right back into the town, since it will be in like the area where you'll see other people, you can also hit S for social, and you go into the public parties, and sometimes you'll see people that will say like offering lab runs. So people will do it. You'll just have to check, like it just says like use me for TP Act 3 go. You'll see sometimes people saying like, you know, carrying this, or you can see this guy over here says swirling fear. So you can right click and ask him for an invite if you want to, but we're going to be actually doing something that I think is more important than showing you guys the lab in this part of the video, which is originally what I planned. I want to answer some of the questions some people might have for the game. So if you're dying too often, it comes down to perhaps the playstyle that you are playing. So be careful when just rushing forward, whatever skill that you're using to rush forward. In our case, it's dash right now, but it could be flame dash, pretty much the same thing. You can't just dash forward and have all the enemies hit you. What you want to do instead, let's say that like this right here is the enemy. I'm not going to just dash forward and then start casting. I want to start casting my stuff, and then I can dash forward. That is a huge thing. Also check for a bunch of life on your gear. Factor that in as well. Another really important thing is your flasks. What you want to do with your flasks is, I already talked about the corrupted blood, but being able to have a life flask that has instant recovery, so it heals it instantly versus like a gradual over a period of time. This is what you're looking for. You can also quality up your flasks if you want. But getting immunity to bleed is obviously very important, and you can get a jewel that has immunity to corrupt the blood, which we already talked about, if you want to. I highly recommend that. That shouldn't be super expensive now. Prices, of course, have changed over the course of time. Usually things slowly start to get cheaper and cheaper, depending on what the item is. Sometimes they can get more expensive, though. And then for another flask, it doesn't matter which flask it is that rolls this, but you want one that has remove curses, and you want one that has immunity to freeze and chill. The reason why is because sometimes when you open up a chest, you'll notice you can't move, or if an enemy hits you and you can't move, that's a lot of times where you will be dying in Path of Exile as well. For me though, I recommend the immunity to corrupted blood to be on your life flask. Why? Because you're already going to be draining your HP by the time that you realize that you're draining. But also with the curses, you'll see it over in the top. There's specifically vulnerability that you need to worry about the most. With Elementalist, you can kind of deal with Elemental Weakness, which is another curse that's going to lower your resistances, but since you have another 2000 shield, it really helps out, and that's why I recommended this for our build guide. If you really want to min-max on some damage, you can actually swap to the Occultist to get a little bit more damage out, but you will lose out on a lot of survivability, specifically on the elemental damage, and you will lose out on having all of these golems. It's kind of up to you. Again, I try not to restrict people to only playing it a certain way, but those are the things that are going to definitely help out in survivability. For Izara though, what you do want to have specifically is a granite flask. This will significantly help you out, and you'll see in the gameplay, because I actually did the gameplay earlier, I was just trying to prep you guys and showing you guys kind of, you know, what we've done over the course of time. But if you're really having trouble on the final lab, get more of the granite flask. Izara hits really hard for physical damage, which we don't have the Primal Aegis absorbing the damage from. So Granite Flask can be excellent. Again, it always comes down to when he's activating some of his like abilities. You got to be able to hear. If you can turn your sound up when you fight him, you'll kind of hear a gradual charge up for his like abilities. They hit hard though. So yeah, as soon as you feel like you might be hit, or heck, you can even throw 4 Granite Flasks and just try to you know, pop one at a time and try to defeat him that way, because he is hard. But we'll show that on the next part of this video, so this one isn't super long, but I just felt like this was actually more important than just showing you the fight in this part. But I'll upload the other like lab very soon, and we still have so much more to talk about. But that's gonna go ahead and wrap up this one. I know it was a lot of more on the build side of things, but that's just part of the game. Also, if you want to start gaining quality on your gems, don't go from like 0 to like max quality. There are certain exceptions on like certain gems, but for the most part, what you want to do is level up the gems to 20. Then you can take them to a vendor and they will give you a level 1 gem, but it will have 20 quality of the same gem that you just traded them. And then you're going to re-level up all the gems, but it won't really take that long, as you're going to be able to get the gem to like level 17 like really fast. It's gonna go really fast, and like right now I'm doing that with like the cold penetration, just because it gives us more min-maxing now than the flat damage was earlier, if that makes any sense, because as we start scaling certain things, things may be faster. But anyways, that's going to go ahead and wrap up this part of the video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. If any questions, please throw them down in the comments below, because this game is not easy. But anyways, drop a like on your way out, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.